Hi guys, so today we will start with the question number 4 from group A, which is to write a Python program that computes the net amount of a bank account based on transaction log from the console input. The transaction log format is shown as following. So this is the transaction log format D100 W200. So withdrawal is not allowed if balance is going negative. Write a function for withdraw and deposit. D means deposit while W means withdraw. Suppose the following input is supplied to the program. This is the input. Then the output should be 500. So basically here we have to create a function which computes the net amount remaining in the bank account. So here we will get input as D and then some integer, then another W, or they may repeat. So depending on this, we have to calculate the transaction log. So here D represents deposit. So we are depositing 100 units in the bank account, and W means withdrawing. So we are removing or withdrawing 200 units from the bank account. So similarly, we have to create functions for withdraw and deposit. Then let's just see this test case. So here, first of all, we are depositing 300. So initially the bank value would be 0. So bank account balance would be 0. Then we are going to deposit 300. So now the current balance is 300. Then again we are going to deposit 300. So previous 300 plus this 300 means total 600 rupees is there in the bank account. Then we have to withdraw 200, means remove 200 from the total amount. So 600 minus 200 would give us 400. And then again we have to deposit 100 units. So previous 400 plus 100 gives us 500. So they have also given the output should be 500, and we have calculated the same and we are getting the same output. So let's just copy this code and move on to the text editor. So let's just paste and save this file as q4.py. So let's just comment this all and let's just think for an approach. So what we have to do? So basically we are going to get this text. We have to separate out each chunk and then calculate. So let's just see how we can do this. So let's assume we have got some input such as D100 and comma W100. So we can do both the things, deposit as well as withdraw. So first of all, we have to break the input from here so that we get two separate parts, which would then give the D100, and similarly the second part would be the W100. So after getting these two parts, we have to again separate these two things because we would need which operation we have to perform and what is the amount using which we are going to perform. So now we will get two things, D and 100, and then W and again 100. So let me just write this again. Yeah, so D100 and W100. So D would be a string and 100 would be an integer. Again this W would be a string and 100 would be an integer. So then we can check whether if this string is D or not. If it is D, then what we will do, we will call function deposit. So we can directly call deposit function. So deposit 100, and similarly here also we can withdraw 100 rupees. So withdraw 100. So we can create some function for these two. As mentioned in the question, we can create two functions for deposit and withdraw, then perform the action. But at first we have to create some storage variable in which we will store the current bank account value, because at start it was 0. Then after depositing this 100, we will get 100, and after again withdrawing the 100 units, we will get again 0. So we will again get 0. So for this input, so for D100 W100, we will get the output as 0 because nothing is left we deposited 100 rupees and removed 100 rupees. Similarly, so if we are going to remove 50, then the return value would be 50. Why? Because we are going to deposit 100 but withdraw only 50. So our value would be 50 in this case. So depending on this, we have to work through. So let's just again move to the text editor and try to implement these things which we discussed. So first of all, we would need to create a storage bank account value. So bank underscore balance, which would be 0 at the starting. Then we have to take the input, or else so we will take the input. So let's just take input variable, or what we can do is transaction log. So transaction log equal to input. So we'll directly take input from the console and we will print a message, enter the transaction log. Transaction log. So user will provide some input and then we have to work on that input. So let's just print for now. So transaction log and execute. So let's just input D 100 and W 100, the same input we discussed. So D100 W100 is working fine as we are getting the print statement also. So this string is now getting stored in this transaction log. So now what we have to do, we have to separate out these two things. So how can we separate out? So as we know, we are getting input as a string, so we can loop through string. So let's just loop through this string and go on to the each character. So for character in transaction log, let's just execute this. Let's just print this character at first. So D100 comma W100. So here now we can see each character is printed on a new line. So D space, then the 1, then 00 comma space, and again W and 100. So here we know whenever we get an comma, we have to break the statement, or we have to split that thing in two parts. So what we can do is we can create a variable called as entry, or you can give anything, a single entry or a single transaction, you can give it anything, but it would be a string. So what we would do, so we will go on adding the character from the transaction log to the entry. So what will this do? Let's just see. So for each this, we will print the entry. Let's just execute D100 and withdraw 100. So here we can see, first of all, D is getting inserted in the entry, then D and space, then D and 1, D and 100, and similarly comma. So whenever we get a comma in the character, we will separate this thing. So what we can do is we can store this entry in some another variable, or we can put this into a list. So let's just create an entry list. So entry underscore list equal to empty list. So here now what we have to do, whenever we get char equal to comma, means we will get comma in the char, we have to stop adding the character to the entry, and we have to store this entry in some list. So we have created an entry list. So let's just first check if character equal to comma. So if we are getting in comma, what we have to do, we have to first of all add this entry into the list. So what we can do is entry list dot append. So we will append entry. So what will this do? This will add whatever entry we have taken in this variable to the entry list. So after that, what we can do is we can clear the entry. So we can make it empty again. So why is it required to make empty again? Because after getting this comma, we have to remove all the stuff entered into the entry. So we'll first check if comma is received, then we will add this entry to the entry list, and then we will clear all the thing from the entry. So let's just print the entry list after this following. So entry list, if we execute now, there are some errors. So here indentation doesn't match. So let me just correct the indent, and now it should work fine. Yes, so what we can do is transaction log would be deposit 100 and withdraw 100. So here I'm getting only D10 and second entry is not getting added. So what is happening here, we are taking this whenever we get this entry, whenever we get n comma, we are adding. If we are not getting n comma, we are not adding the last thing. So let's just try again and give a long string. So deposit 100, again deposit 100, and then withdraw 100. So here we can see this text D100 is repeating twice. Why? Because whenever we reach a comma, we will add everything before this. This is in the entry, so we'll add this thing in the entry list. Again we receive a comma, we would add all the previous things into the list. And here at last we are not getting an comma. So what is this doing? This is ignoring this. So what we have to do at last, after the for loop completes, we have to add the entry into entry list. So entry list equal not equal to append. So entry list dot append entry. So here if we again execute D100, D50, D10, let's just take NW50. So now we can see all three are getting added. But here we can also see that comma and space is also being added. So what we can do is we can remove this thing, or we can directly continue. So whenever this if case happens, after that we have to continue. We have to not add that comma. So what we can do is we can directly continue. So if you are thinking to add a break here, what will break do? Break will exit this for loop. So if first comma occurs, it will directly stop taking input or calculating the next entry. Why? Because we are adding a break. We don't have to break the thing, we have to just continue. We have to skip further all processes for this character. So now if we execute, let's just take again the D100, D10 and withdraw 67. Yes. So now we can see here the comma is not getting added, just the space is getting added. So to remove this space also, what we can do is either instead of checking for space, we will calculate this when we are going to split this other function. So here we are seeing the basic working of an split function. So what the split does, it splits the text using some deeliminator. So deeliminator means a character or a set of character which is used between some things, using which we have to split that string. So here using this comma, we are splitting the things into three different parts. So similarly, if we have n commas, the partition would be using that n commas. So this comma is called as an deeliminator. So whatever we have done here, we can do the same thing using an inbuilt function called a split. So let's just try to use that. So let's just comment this also, we are not going to append anything, and let's just comment this also. So this is for basic split thing. So before printing the entry list, let's just create one. So entry list equal to, so we can directly use a split. So first of all, we have to mention the string. So string is in the transaction log. So transaction log dot split. So split is a method which split using some deeliminator. So we have to give comma. If we provide a comma and execute, let's just give D10, D10 and again W10. So here now we can see the same output which we have calculated using the for loop. So here spaces are also included, same as in our last thing. So here, as we know, after every comma we are going to get a space. We can also add space as a deeliminator. So here it can also take a set of character. So now if we execute, let's just take the input again. So here now you can see each spaces are also getting removed from the partition. Why? Because we are considering comma and space as an deeliminator. So like this, the split function works. So as we have just discussed, we have to again split this values into two parts. So what we can do is for, or instead of using a for, what we can do, okay, let's just use the for entry in entry list. So we are now accessing each individual entry, and now let's just print the entry. So entry execute. So again the d10 w. So let's just copy and keep this string so that we can use this further. So now what we have to do is, let's just execute this. So here we can see d10 getting printed, d10 again getting printed. So this is a single entity. Now we have to split this again. So what we can do is entry.split. So here split will be using the delimiter, which is the space. So between these two things we have a space. So let's just give a space and execute. So the same thing which we used. So here there is an issue that we gave an extra space. So let's just copy this transaction only. Let's just execute this once more and paste this. So here now we can see d10 here we have given an extra space. So here the format matters. Why? Because we are using comma and space to split the thing, but here an extra space is getting added. So what we can do is, let's just copy the string again and modify, or what we can do is we can use this thing. So, or what we can do, let's just execute this again and modify this thing. So removing space, again pasting it here. So now you can see no extra spaces are being added. And now if we enter, we can see d separate 10 separate, d separate 10 separate, w 10, d10, w10. So this is the entry list and splitting of that. So as we can here see, the list after splitting would have two elements. We can separate this element as operation, or operation and the amount. So let's just first store this thing. So separate entry list, let's just give this variable name separate entry list. And now what we will do, operation op equal to separate entry list. So let's just copy this variable name. So the zeroth element means the zeroth index element, which is the first element, we will take it as an operation. So then we can also take the amount, would be the same thing but the second element. So here as we will be working with some calculations, we will just convert this into an integer. So now amount is integer, operation is a string, and we are getting this thing separately. So now we can directly check here if the operation equal to the d, means we are checking if the operation is deposit, we will deposit the thing. So let's just create a comment for now because we haven't created any deposit function. So let's just put a pass here also. Similarly, let's just copy this thing and again paste this. So here instead of checking d, we will check for w, and instead of deposit it would be withdrawal. So let's just execute this, or instead of putting a comment, let's just create a print. Let's just print the thing. So print deposit comma amount. So we'll print both the things. So again here also print withdrawal comma amount, and we will remove this pass. So this should be string, and this deposit should also be a string. So let's just execute this again, and now we have to mention the transaction log. So let's just deposit 10, withdraw 100 and execute. Yes, so now we can see deposit 10 and withdrawal 100. So to check whether the amount is integer or not, we can add 10 to it so that we can see whether the mathematical operation executes or not. So let's just execute this again, and d10 and let's just withdraw 20. So yes, so deposit 10 and 10 plus 10 is 20. Similarly 20 and 30. So this amount is an integer. So everything works fine. Now we have to create function. So let's just create deposit and it would take the amount, which is AMD. Similarly here we would withdraw the amount. So withdraw function and the amount. So here, as at the first we created a bank balance, now we have to create some function to work with that. So let's just define a function. It would be, let's just define it first only. So after bank balance, let's just define this. So define deposit and it would take an amount, and what will this do is it will add that amount to the bank balance. So bank underscore balance equal plus equals the amount. So similarly define withdraw. So withdraw, and it would also take amount, and it will check if bank underscore balance is greater than or equal to the amount. So here, whenever we will be withdrawing the amount from the bank balance, we have to check whether that much balance is present or not. So what may happen, like in this case, so 10 plus 10, 20, and we can withdraw 20. But what would happen if we only consider this much transaction log? So we have deposited only 10, but we are trying to withdraw 20. So this is not possible. So what we can do is, if and only if the bank balance is greater than or equal to the amount, then we will reduce. So bank underscore balance minus equals amount. So we will reduce that much amount. Else what we can do is we can print a message. So print not enough bank balance. So not ENOUGH, not enough bank balance. So ANK bank balance. So let's just execute this once and deposit 10 and withdraw 10. So here there is some issue. Bank balance reference before assignment. So what is happening here? Just put, yeah, so names are correct. So at the line 12, so bank balance, okay, we have to, here what is happening is the bank balance is a global variable, but whenever we use this, it is creating a local instance of this bank balance variable. So what we have to do, we have to use the global keyword and then bank underscore balance. So this should work fine. Okay, so indentation issue. So what we can do is, let's just indent this, and here let's just execute. So D10 and W10. So the answer should be 10 because we are depositing 20 but we are withdrawing only 10. So here we have again got an error with the withdraw function. So the second method what we can do is we can also pass this bank balance as a parameter. So instead of making this a global or defining the Python that this is global variable, use that, we can directly pass this bank balance too. So what we can do is in the withdraw we can pass the bank balance. So bank balance underscore balance and comma amount. So both the things work fine. You can directly create tell the Python that this bank balance is a global thing, or in the withdraw function you can pass that as a parameter. So let's just execute this again, the same log, and at last we have to print the thing. So we haven't print, so it is giving an error. So print the bank underscore balance. So let's just execute the same transaction log and 20. So why is this giving 20? Okay, so here let me just check bank balance 20. So let's just return the bank balance at last. and try to print this. So return bank underscore balance. So bank underscore balance returning, and deposit also will return the bank underscore balance. So return bank underscore balance, and then we will try to print. So let's just directly print this function. So what is happening here is we have deposited 20, but after withdrawal, here bank balance should be greater than equal to the amount, then only we will reduce. So yeah, let's just try printing this deposit because it is going to return a value. So let's just print this thing. So let's just print and execute. So transaction log, the same thing. And first of all, the bank balance was after performing deposit, it became 10. Then after okay, so here is an issue. So what is happening here? First of all, for the first deposit, let's just print this string too, so that we won't confuse. So deposit and comma, so deposit, and here should be withdrawal. So withdrawal. So again the same transaction thing, and here now we can see deposit. First of all, deposited 10. So as per our transaction log, it is correct. Second, again deposit 10. So total value is the 20. Yeah, we are returning the bank value. So bank balance. So it is returning as 20. Then after withdrawal, it is returning 10. But why is it not happening? So let's just remove this parameter and see whether global thing works or not. Maybe while passing the parameter, it is making a copy and it is not returning the thing. So let's just make bank underscore balance as a global variable and execute this again. So here again this thing doesn't work, so we have to check the indentation. So transaction log, again the same, and here withdrawal takes one per argument, so we can remove this thing, only the amount. So here we can see it takes only one positional argument, but we have given two in the first case, which was the bank balance and the amount. So now it should work fine. Let's just check. Yes, so now it is working fine. So there was an issue with the passing the parameter. So whenever a parameter is passed using the function, what will happen? It will create a copy of that parameter. So here, whenever this global was not there and we were using the parameter, it performed the operation correctly. But what was happening? The main bank balance, the global bank balance, was not correctly updated because we are not returning. So this return is for just checking. But here, whenever this function was executing, the bank balance would stay at its local copy. So the changes which we made here, we changed the amount, it was not reflecting in the original bank balance. So therefore it was having an issue. So let's just return this statement because we would not need, and let's just remove this print also. So yes, let's just remove this thing and execute. So transaction log, let's just take the log from the question, and okay, so here there is some issue with the format, so spaces. So this should work fine now. So there was an extra space after the D300. So let's just copy, let's just paste here, and we should get the answer as 500. So yes, 300 plus 300, 600, minus 200, which is 400, 400 plus 100, 500. So we are getting correct value. So we can also print a string, current bank balance equal to. So let's just execute this again, paste the same thing, and current bank balance equal to 500. So now this program works fine. So this was the whole program for how we can perform this thing, compute the net amount of a bank account using the transaction log given in this format, and then output. So this was the basic program for that. So this was all for this video. Let's just meet in a new video with a new question.